Hi, everyone. Welcome. Top right-hand side, for this activity, put yourself in the gallery mode. But before we start, welcome. Please enter your name and what city you're coming from. Feel free to add your LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with other folks in the community as well. For those who are watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, live stream, we want you in the conversation as well. So introduce yourself in the comments and tell us what city you're coming from. If you want to put your LinkedIn, you can do that as well. And feel free to connect with each other. Feel free to ask questions in the comments as well. But once again, introduce yourself. Let us know what city you're coming from and just your name. So the focus on today's Let's Talk is how I had it all, or how I had to lose it all to gain back my life with Jill Katz. For those new to Community of Seven, there is one singular purpose of these Let's Talk calls, and it's to create an environment where you can come as you authentically are, where you are accepted, and where you can have deep, meaningful conversations with other purpose-led leaders to talk about what really matters the most for you. For those who are in the live Zoom audience, if you can, please turn on your video because we want to see you in the conversation. I can say as a speaker, it's so helpful for me to see your lovely faces, but I also, understand if you can't turn your camera on as well. But we want you active and chatting in the comment section. So if something that Jill says really resonates with you, give us an amen, a hallelujah, let us know. Also, if you have advice or things you want to share, an experience you want to share with the other participants, do so in the chat in the comment. And that goes for the folks who are on the live stream as well. We want you participating in this as this is a conversation, okay? Once again, if you can, turn on your videos. If you're in the live Zoom audience for the next activity, top right-hand side, put yourself on gallery mode so you should kind of see all of us in a little square, kind of like the Brady Bunch grid. So we always start these calls with a series of questions, and you're going to raise both hands like this if the answer is yes. How many of you have had a life-changing event happen to you in the past decade? How many of you have had a life-changing event happen to you in the past year? How many of you have lost a loved one in the past 10 years? How many of you have lost a loved one in the past year? How many of you are trying to figure out the next chapter in your life? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for being honest. And on the top right-hand side, put this in speaker mode, so you should probably just see me. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for making this call today. As I mentioned earlier, today's discussion for this Let's Talk is how I had to lose it all to gain back my life with Jill Katz. I'm so excited to have Jill here. I first met Jill through our mutual friend, Mita Malik, who many of you have met because she's been a recurring guest on our Let's Talks and our microlearning. But Mita, about 2 years ago, or maybe 3, raved over Jill and said, you have to meet this woman. She's a dynamo. She's generous. She's a community builder. She's dynamic. She's a change maker. I was like, hell yes, introduce me to her. It took us over a year to finally connect. And we ended up talking for an hour. And we talked about work, life. I kind of felt like I knew her forever. And I knew that she had to come here as a guest. When we first decided on the topic, we landed on Jill's personal experience with leaving corporate America and starting her own company, Assemble HR Consulting. I really felt it was kind of relevant for the times that we're in with the Great Resignation. Before most of you guys got on the line, Jill and I were talking about just how much change the pandemic had and just how people are really trying to figure out what's next, and how in the past, you base success on what title you had or how much money you had in your bank account. And the pandemic really changed things and really made people stop and ask themselves, what's my purpose? What's my reason for being? So I'm going to let Jill tell her story because I can't do it justice, but I can tell you why this topic resonated with me. During that initial conversation I had with Jill last year in July, she called me when I was in Los Angeles. And I had done something that I had never done ever in my adult life. I took a pause from work and I took the summer off and I spent it with my mother, my 85-year-old mother. For those who have followed my story either on LinkedIn or here, my mom has had advanced dementia for probably the past 10 years now. The reason why I say I would have never done this in the past is for the past 15 years, maybe 20 years, I never really could take a pause and take time off and really focus on the things that matter to me. Maybe I could take a week or a few days, but a whole summer, that would never happen. And I actually paused my business, didn't take on new clients, and took the summer off. And I would never have thought that was possible, ever, right? And in the past, I couldn't have done that because there was no company that I ever had worked for that would have let me take off a summer, let alone 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Granted, I had saved and had money in my bank account. And so I didn't just take time off without attending to my responsibilities, like my mortgage and such. So that's just a disclaimer. But for anyone who has been a caregiver to someone who has dementia, you know that it is an excruciatingly slow way to lose someone. It's like the person you love gets chipped away at you slowly. First, they forget phone numbers and names. When I went to stay at my mom and I was cleaning through her house, I found thousands and thousands upon crumpled folded papers with my name and my phone number, my brother's name and my phone numbers, and my daughter's birth date. And my mom was basically trying to grab onto all of those memories because she was slowly forgetting it. And so when the person you love forgets your name, when they start hallucinating, their personality changes, and the different parts of their brains are damaged and suffocating from oxygen. It's really painful. During that time, I had the realization that our time on this earth is so short. My mom had a closet full of clothes with tags still on that she never wore. She was waiting for that special occasion that never happened. She had special china and silverware that was never taken out because she was waiting for the special dinner guest that never came. I am so fortunate to still have my mother, but I know that time is fleeting. How many of us have to lose what we love, or lose our health, lose our loved ones, lose our relationships, lose our jobs before we pause and truly fight for our life, to live out our dreams and passions before we're able to focus on what matters most to us? If you're like my mom and me before I learned my lesson, don't wait. Use the china, put on that outfit you've been waiting to wear, hug your kids, take that vacation, go after your dreams. Tomorrow is not promised. For those that follow me on LinkedIn, you might have saw my post today. I ran into this quote a while back and it really resonated with me. If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. When on an airplane, what's the one thing they tell you to do in case of an emergency? Yep, it's always put on your oxygen mask on first before you can help anyone. Why? You can't help anyone unless you're breathing, unless you're alive. So before I introduce our guest for today, in the chat, for those who are kind of watching on the live stream, I want you to kind of answer this question. What's the one thing that's holding you back from truly living? What's the one thing holding you? Don't press send till I tell you. What's the one thing that's holding you from truly living? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, send. Self-love, fear, finances. Okay, so there's a lot of finances, fear. I see a lot of fear. Cancer, sorry. Money. So it seems to kind of run that gamut between fear and finances, right? I totally understand. So right now let me find, where are you? So I can pin you. Oh, there you are, Jill. Hi, Jill. So let me pin you. Hello. So before I introduce our guest today, Jill, I want to introduce Jill Katz. She's the Chief Human Resource Officer at Assemble HR Consulting. She's an influencer, a speaker, a strategy coach who is passionate about shifting workplace to be more people focused. Using her 3C's approach, candor, courage, and care, Jill helps leaders and teams build a workplace that works through organizational transformation, candid communication, cultivation of top talent, and focus on culture. She's a seasoned human capital expert, facilitator, and executive coach with more than 20 years of experience in fashion, retail, digital technology, media, and banking industries. She has served several senior HR talent leadership roles at USA Network, IAC, Ann Taylor, Calvin Klein, Macy's, Eli Tahari. In leading the human resource functions, Jill has worked closely with senior executive teams to build leadership capabilities, drive performance strategies, and focus on employee culture and experience. Um, Drum roll, excited to meet Jill. Hey, Jill.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you so much. So I kind of gave the high level work stuff, the professional stuff, but tell us a little bit more about Jill, like just everything we need to know that's beyond the CV.
Well, I think the most important thing that you need to know is that the title that matters more to me than anything else is mom. I have two of the most amazing young people that I have raised and raising together with my husband Josh. And there is nothing in the world that matters more to me. And when I introduce myself to anybody, I say that I spent my whole life dreaming of being a mom, and that's all I ever wanted. It's all I ever wanted, and it was my dream come true. My daughter Lexi is 16 years old in a couple months, and I cannot believe that. I mean, I'm only 17, so how can I that's 16. She is brilliant and brave and bold and independent and knows who she is. And I'm proud of that in my daughter. She's a basketball player. She goes to sleepaway camp and she loves it. And that was all that ever mattered to me. And my son, Benny, is going to be 13 this summer. And I don't know how that happened because he's my baby. And he is bound for Broadway one day. And he just came off the stage in his middle school where he was in a high school musical and he was Troy. So watch out. There is a big star coming. So the first thing I tell anyone is that I'm a mom. I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. I'm proud to say that looking at this screen, there are friends here that I have known since I was 8 years old. I take relationships so seriously, and one of my hashtags is it's all about relationships because I believe that at the end of the day, there is truly nothing that matters more.
I love that. I totally resonate with you on the mom thing because, like prior to this, I always kind of had a different title. Like, think about when we go to like dinner parties. What is the first thing people ask? What's your job? What do you do? And I started doing these events like with my core. I'm like, don't talk about your job. Who are you as a person? Because that's what really matters. That's at the end of the day, no one is at their deathbed thinking, I wish I'd spent more time at the office, right? And the people that really matter, the people who are surrounding you at your deathbed, are really the people who really matter most. But then, and I think this is why this conversation we're going to have today is so important. But most of us, I know I did when I was younger, we put all of our time and our energy into building other people's businesses or to, you know, hitting this number, quarterly number. And then at the end, my one of my dear friends, Jody Harris, just passed away of cancer. And like I just think she had such an amazing life and she touched so many lives, but now you never know when your last day is going to be. And so what do you do with it, right? So, you know, thank you so much for that, kind of that personal behind the scenes, who is Jill. In the past, you've had a lot of like senior roles at Macy's and IAC, Eli Tahari, etc. And really high profile jobs. You've had impressive career. You've moved up the ranks at large companies, rarely, pretty quickly as well. And then from conversations I've had with you in the past, you experienced a life-changing event. Can you share your story?
I'd be happy to. And I'll stop and say there's some comments for people that are having a hard time hearing me. So just quickly, raise your hand if you cannot hear me. That's a first. My husband just said he cannot hear me. That might be the best moment of his whole life. Are there people that can hear me? All right. Josh, maybe you should just...
Josh, maybe you should just go in the room. I mean, I'm just saying. You have the best seat in the house.
I think he's happy. I'm going to put the mic on the table, but please do speak up if you can't hear me. So it's true. In my 30s, I was incredibly lucky. I was ambitious. I was career. I wanted that trophy. I somehow was incredibly lucky and hardworking. I was the head of HR Global for Calvin Klein. I wore black, gray, black, and gray, and sometimes black. And I put on the heels and the crossbody bag, and I got on the train, and I went into New York City, and I had the top job at Macy's, and I had the top job at Ann Taylor, and I was running HR for huge fashion companies. And when you talk about the fact that your life can change in the blink of an eye, unfortunately, I am one of those people. And I will also tell you that I have told this story out loud publicly a total of only 2 times. And I speak publicly all the time. But it's just not common to talk about the fact that I'm a pulmonary embolism survivor. And so there I was, living my best life, thinking that everything was perfect. Everything was perfect. I had an amazing job. I had everything a person could ever want. I went out on maternity leave to have my perfect son. And I came back from maternity leave, and even more perfect from that, I was promoted. Who gets promoted 2 weeks after returning from maternity leave? But I thought, wow, this is incredible. And that was just before Thanksgiving break. We went on Thanksgiving break, and I got to share great news with my family. I came back from maternity leave, and I've just been promoted to a new job. And we drove home from Thanksgiving, a long trip from Boston to New Jersey with our newborn baby in tow and my 3-year-old daughter. And I woke up on Sunday morning of Thanksgiving weekend, and I walked down the stairs. I was on the cell phone with a friend, and I realized that I couldn't finish a sentence. But I didn't say anything because I think we all know that you don't complain. So I just kept going, and I couldn't finish a sentence. I did not want to tell my husband because I was totally embarrassed, and I decided what any one of us would decide. I was probably just exhausted. So I kept doing what I was doing. I was folding laundry, which I don't do anymore, don't worry. I was getting things ready in the house and taking care of the baby, but I was so exhausted and I just couldn't breathe. And so I finally said to my husband, I think I'm having a panic attack. We should probably stop at the doctor, but we can't stay long because we have dinner plans. At least I had my priorities in order. Long story short, my husband took me to an emergency walk-in clinic. And about 25 minutes later, the doctor said, I think she's having a PE. Up to this point in my life, all I knew from PE was physical education. I thought he was talking about gym class. I didn't know what a PE was. And about 2 hours later, I was essentially unconscious in the emergency room with a pulmonary embolism. I had a 99% blockage of my left pulmonary artery. I had 6 additional clots in my right lung. I was 34 years old. I had a 16-week-old baby. I had a 3-year-old. And I had probably about 4 hours to live. When people say, my husband saved my life, it's typically a colloquialism. I can honestly say that Josh Katz literally saved my life. And had he not thrown me in the car at that exact time, P.S. we fought about it, because I really wanted to get to the dinner plan, I probably wouldn't be here with you today.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. And in the comments or raise your hand, how many of you guys could relate to that story in terms of trying to ride it through? Like, and that's something that you would probably do. I see a few yes, right? Because I was listening to your story. I'm like, that's totally something I would do. I'm just like, oh, it's just a headache. Or, oh, I'm, just feeling faint, or I should eat. And like, you just don't want to bother anyone. I mean, so how did that experience with pulmonary embolism change you? Like, it must have been a life-changing event.
So, Lan, I'm embarrassed by this story, but it's important to share it. Initially, it sent me in the wrong direction. The perfect story would be that I had a PE and I came out of the hospital and became a marathon runner, and I became Jillian Michaels' biggest competitor, and I went to work for The Biggest Loser, and that's your story. But it was actually the opposite. What happened is that fear sent me completely into Uber drive. I went back to work. I was overcome with guilt, with shame, with terror. I buried my head. I worked even harder. I was furious. I could not understand how a 34-year-old driven, successful woman who had done nothing wrong in her life should have a pulmonary embolism. And to be honest, I gained about 50 pounds.
Wow. So was it kind of just, why do you think you reacted that way to that experience? Like, what was it that drove you to kind of?
Years of therapy, years of coaching, and I think this was your classic anger and defense mechanism, and I didn't know where to put my anger and my fear and my terror and my confusion about what had happened to me. When you are, I still have a memory of a doctor saying to me, "Ooh, I don't know if you're going to make it." I actually remember a person saying that to me, and I remember looking at her in the hospital that night and saying, "Of course I am. Like that's absurd. I'm 34. Like, I'm not going anywhere. I have a baby at home. Like, take this out of my arm. I gotta go." Like, we were not on the same page. It was not computing. And I was just so angry. And I just went into a stage of anger where I ate 50 pounds of fury. And it set me into a stage of my life of sadness and fire that is hard to describe. And so there I was for the next 5 to 6 years. Now I was a harder charger. I was going to achieve higher goals faster. Like I was now running out of time. Like now I saw that at any moment it could be over. And now I needed to set everything up because tomorrow could be the last day. And I woke up one day and I was 40 and I was literally in the job of my dreams. And I was making more money than I had ever dreamed of. And I had a corner office at the largest, most well-known retailer, and I had an assistant who sat outside my office, and she brought my lunch to me on fine china every day. And I took a car service home, and I was unhappy, unhealthy. I was a size 20.
It's funny because that was the question I was going to ask you. You had all the success, but were you happy?
I was the most miserable human being I had ever been. I never saw my children. I left at 7:14 in the morning and I got home at 8:12 at night. And it was miserable. It was a miserable, miserable existence.
How many of you guys can relate right now to Jill? Because I'm hearing your story and I'm like, that was literally my story. The, executive titles, thought I had everything I wanted, was home at 10, I said my family was the most important thing to me, but I was at home 10 o'clock at night every night. I would leave before my daughter, went to school. And it's like we think we have it all, or inside we're kind of slowly dying, right? So what did you do? And, after this experience, I mean, because, what was that point in terms of like where you said this needs to end or this needs to stop? Like what was that kind of made you who you are today, I guess?
I never told anyone my story. There were probably 3 people that knew what really happened. My mom,
all of us.
Now, yeah, my mom, my dad, my brother, my husband knew about the PE. My children, I never told them. I never told my friends at work. My childhood friends knew, but nobody knew this happened to me. I kept it a secret. I was embarrassed. I didn't want anyone to know I had this horrible, life-threatening, embarrassing thing that would make me look weak. I didn't want anyone to know. And my husband just watched me get larger and sadder, and the bigger I got, the smaller I became as a person. And there was this moment I will forget never. We were standing on the corner of 34th and 7th Avenue in front of a really shabby Dunkin' Donuts that had amazing coffee. Like amazing coffee. And we were having some kind of an argument. And I was angry about something. It was right next to my building. And as loud as possible, right there in New York City, right on the corner, my husband said to me, "You walk in that building right now and you quit your job. You have 6 weeks to do it. And if you don't, I will." And of course, no one in New York thought this was weird because people are screaming at each other in the city all the time. So no one even turned and looked at us. It was perfectly normal. And I thought to myself, I have to do something. I looked at my body. I didn't recognize her. I realized that all the money in the world was never going to buy back these years with my children. The clock was ticking. And the truth is, I was on the train to another PE. And I literally quit my job. I mean, I literally just quit my job. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have another job. I just quit my job.
Wow. Let me read some comments before I ask you your next question. Michelle says, kudos to you, your husband, Josh. Health is wealth. Thank you for sharing your story. Jason Springer, every day we look in the mirror at ourselves, and if you don't like what you see, only you can start the change. And also congrats, Jill, for finding your way. Thank you for sharing. And Kathy Lonis, our corporate culture drives us to invincibility. Hang your head in shame that you might be considered weak. And Michelle, thank you for this one. Never be embarrassed by your stories. They mold us into who we are. And we have a lot of people who are just saying, yes, been there, done that. Mental health is so important. Listen to yourself. So let's rewind a little bit. You quit your job. And then what? You're trying to figure it out. No job, no income. Josh is like, quit. You quit. Now what?
I quit my job. I quit my job. I remember sitting in my bedroom. This was pre-pandemic. This was pre-everything. I was just sort of sitting in my bedroom without a job. I was a size 20. I was jobless. I was living in New Jersey. My whole life, everything I knew was in New York City. It was a terrifying moment. I called a doctor and I said, I need to put my health first. I put a plan together with that doctor. I said, I have to get back to health. I said, I will do anything I need to do. I do not want to have surgery, but I will do anything I have to do. And then I put a crossbody bag on and I got on the train and I went into New York City and I literally started walking the streets and visiting people that I had worked with in my field for 20 years and saying, what are you doing? Tell me about your business. I want to learn about your business. I want to help you. I took on free work. I just started consulting with people to help them and feel like I could add value to their businesses because I've been coaching and developing leaders for 24 years and it just felt good to be with people and not be with my bedroom and myself. I didn't want to be alone. And sooner or later, people said, can you help with this? Can you do a little bit of that? And could you take on a project? And would you mind doing this? And suddenly I had a couple of projects. I was working with a doctor. I had lost 5 pounds. 5 pounds became 6, became 7. And after about 2 years, I had been hired by a couple of clients. I incorporated myself. I became an LLC, Assemble, worked hard. I spent $1,500 to have a logo made. I could not believe I spent so much money on a designer. I like almost died, paid for an LLC. I hired a part-time assistant against my will because I thought a little bit of help would help me with my calendar. One more person came on part-time, 5 hours a week. Then I had a paying client, which I could not believe. And 2 years later, I had lost 77 pounds and the business was 12 people.
Wow. This is so inspiring. Jill, I've talked to so many people during this pandemic who have wanted to leave their job, start their own things, but their whole question is, I don't know where to begin. And so your story is, it kind of reminds me of this, one of my favorite quotes. I forget who it's by. I think it's a executive coach, but his quote is, jump and the net will appear. And your story kind of sounds similar to mine when I got laid off of Fortune. I didn't know what I was building with Community of Seven, but I just kind of kept on moving forward. Like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and you just take one step forward. And you literally started with one step, going into Manhattan and walking probably like miles every day and just meeting with people and connecting and kind of letting the next step take you to your next generation, your next destination. I think that's such a powerful, really powerful story. So during that time, what was some of the hardest parts that you had to kind of endure transitioning from being in corporate now to starting your own business?
I was fighting two battles. I was waging two wars. The first war that I was waging was the war against my body. Right? My body had spent now almost 10 years being a lot larger than it wanted to be. You can't tell right now, but I'm not very tall. I may look like I'm 6'2", but I'm not, and I was not meant to be a size 20. And my body had gotten used to being really overweight, and it was not easy to lose 77 pounds. And there are some vices that some of us are unlucky enough to get hooked on that you can quit. You can go for rehab and you can quit drugs. You can go for rehab and you can quit alcohol. You can't quit food. You can't quit food. That's also a dangerous proposition. And so losing weight is a very hard battle because you can't break up with it. You have to change your relationship. And so every day you still have to eat. You have to look at food and talk to food every day, multiple times a day. You just have to do it differently. You got to face it. You got to face your enemy and your lover multiple times a day. And so that's a war. That's a war. And that was really hard. And by the way, it's still hard. I've gained 19 pounds back in COVID.
I think everyone did, though. I think the average American gained like 30 pounds, like literally 30 pounds during the pandemic. So you're not alone.
I'm not alone, but I'm still mad about it. So, it's out there and the war continues. And so that was a war that I waged every day. The other thing is I was lonely, as you can probably tell. I'm not a solo type of girl. I'm a team person. I like to collaborate. And so the job I left was leading a team of 60. And now suddenly I was a team of Jill and Jill's crossbody bag. And so I was lonely and I was scared and I wanted people to think with and collaborate with and be with. And so I needed to create my own communities. I needed to be part of a team. And so I worked really hard to find ways to feel belonging.
Yeah.
And so those were two of the hardest parts for me. I didn't want to feel like an outsider. I didn't like it when people called me a consultant. That felt yucky.
Yeah.
So those were really big changes in my life.
Yeah. It's funny for the people who are kind of on this call right now. Jill's kind of talking about the things she needed to lose, which was her mental baggage, but also the physical weight. For some of you, it might be drugs, it might be alcohol, it might be whatever vice that that's kind of holding you back. One of my favorite Toni Morrison quotes is, if you want to fly, you got to give up the shit that weighs you down. And so that's kind of been the guiding principle in my life since college is I think change happens in two ways. It's what you add into your life. So, Jill talks about starting home business, starting, a community, making connections, and then also what you take out of your life. That's two ways you change your life: what you add and what you put in, or take away. And for her, it was taking away the weight, taking away some of this emotional baggage, taking away these long, crazy hours in corporate America, right? So I think that the exercise for the folks who are on this call is look at your life right now. What are the things you can take away? What are the things you can add, right? Because people make change to be so difficult. But if you kind of look at your life and you kind of take it step by step, and I think about Jill's kind of story about all she did was she went on a walk. She went into the city, she started walking, and she started connecting with people. And through each conversation, her business was built one brick at a time, right? I think that's the powerful moral of that kind of story. So tell us where you're out now. Tell us, what are you doing? Speed this up to the current day.
I have a motto that you and I talked about in the beginning of our call, which is it's all about relationships. I believe that everything good that happens in our lives, everything bad that happens in our lives, everything that happens in our lives, you can trace it back to a relationship. The best thing that happened in my business happened because of a relationship. About 2 years in, a company I had worked for made a bad decision, and they decided to eliminate a job. This is the best thing that ever happened to me, because the person that had worked on my team when I was there, who was the most talented person I ever worked with, lost her job. She and I ended up connecting on the phone, and she said to me, my job was eliminated in the COVID pandemic, etc. And I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. I have an idea. Why don't you come and work with me? Long story short, I gave her a project. She came on. She ultimately became our chief care officer, and our company tripled in size and has gone 5 times in revenue since she joined. So when I talk about it's all about relationships, when I was alone, the business was about $250,000, a little less. Jamie Delaney, who's on the call today, joined me as my business partner. And when I say it's all about relationships, she came on and the company is now a multi-million-dollar business.
Woohoo!
And that's what happens when the right people are in your life. A friend, a person that you can rely on, a person who you trust, a person who wants the best for you, for the business, who is another change maker. That to me is what this world is all about. And when I used to read silly articles where people said, when you love your work, you don't feel like you're working a day in your life, I used to want to blow those memes up on my phone, and I used to hate them, and now I want to post them, because that is what Assemble feels like to me. We now have a team of almost 20 people. We have a clear business. Our mission is to bring people-focused leadership to the forefront of the workplace. We've never strayed from that mission from the day I started the company in my bedroom by myself, staring at my closet. That's what we do. We focus on culture, communication, conflict, and change. And we work with leaders in all kinds of organizations that are aligned with our mission. And I have never in my life loved my life as much as I do. And I live my life for my children. And I get to do what I love. And it is unbelievable. I'm 45. I'm gonna lose these 19 pounds and I'm in control. And I'm here to tell people that anybody can do this. If I can do it, if I can get hit with a pulmonary embolism, if I can lose 77 pounds, if I can quit a job without a job, there's nothing special about me. I'm just any other person. Everyone can do this.
I love this. I just want to read some of the comments here. So inspiring, Dave Hansen. Julia, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. I love that. Michelle Cordy, one of my favorite quotes, love what you do and never work a day in your life. And Julia says, we're proud to work with these amazing women. I think what I love so much too, Jill, is that you can see the excitement in your voice, but you could also hear the love of your team. And that makes such a big difference when you're building a business and it's yours and it's your baby, but you're also creating the culture. And I look at some of the posts that you have, and it's just it always makes me smile when I see one of your Assemble HR posts, because it's all about community. You've basically birthed something that was uniquely yours, right? So you lost the weight, but you gain this amazing community, this amazing business. And I think that's the moral of this kind of conversation that we're having, is sometimes it's really scary to let go of the past and let go of what you're known. Because think about it, you're making all this money working for these big corporations, you're quitting, the fear that you must have felt. And I always say that faith is being able to see something that hasn't happened yet, right? But that's faith, knowing that it is around the corner, and you didn't picture it, but you created this. And I think that's going to be, for the folks who are kind of listening on this, for people who've lost their jobs during COVID, for people who have been laid off or are figuring out what's next, or been unemployed for I know people who haven't had jobs for 2-3 years. Keep on going, because there's something around the corner. There's something, right? I want to open this up to question. Anyone, if you have a question for Jill, let me know in the comments, or you can also unmute and ask your question as well. Anyone have a question?
Lynn,
yes.
Lynn, Jason Springer, and Jill, thank you so much for doing today's seminar. I really appreciate the level of transparency that you're able to provide for this audience. I just wanted to share not only my thanks to Jill and Lynn, but for the people that need to hear this. It's so awesome for people to open up their experience in this conversation, because one resource that helped me besides medical help for breaking the cycle of depression, I was the person who put cancer inside the chat. I just wanted people to understand that while medical providers will bring you resources to help with that, you also can find other resources. So I just wanted to share, there's a book called Unbreakable by Jay Glazer that came out last month. And he said in the book towards the end, and this doesn't, ruin the book for anybody, but you have to understand that each of us is messed up, and that we all need to embrace our own messed upness. Now, he may have used more colorful language, but I just want people to understand that we're not alone in this battle. And I do firmly believe that each of us can place our time and energy as a commodity that we'll never get back. So do it towards meaningful things. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That's beautiful. It kind of reminds me of the kintsugai in Japanese culture. They repair broken pottery with gold lacquer. And so their belief is that when things are broken, they can become more beautiful. The brokenness is actually what makes it beautiful. And so I think that is a good example of kind of kintsugai, that your what you think is broken is really your strength. And I'm seeing Jill now, just like with her challenges, made her so much stronger and so much more inspirational to the folks who are in this room and on this call. Anyone else have a question or anything? And once again, thank you so much for that, Jason. Anyone have a question? You can just unmute, or you can just let us know in the chat, and let me look at LinkedIn as well. Anyone? Okay. So I'll kind of go. So what is your next journey after to the present day, right? And you know what? Let me rewind a little bit, because I wanted to ask this and I totally forgot. I think it's important to know your why. And so a lot of times when people say, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds or 15 pounds or whatever it is because I want to fit in my jeans, that's not a big enough why. What was your big why in terms of what finally got you? Because all of us on this call have probably tried to lose weight 1,000,001 times. What was your why? And I'll give you an example. Is I had gained a lot of weight too when my mom almost died and was in hospice, like had 4 strokes probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I literally stopped taking care of my health, kind of similar to you. And then finally, my why was I want to be there for my daughter. I want to be able to walk her, be at her wedding. I don't want to have dementia. And so me taking care of my health is more than me fitting in my jeans. It's about being there for the people I love. What was your big why that got you to finally change?
I think I had a couple of whys. I had a physical why. My physical why was that my daughter's bat mitzvah was coming. And it was about, I think it was probably a year away or 2 years away at that point. I don't remember. And I remember picturing this milestone event in my life and thinking, not me. I don't want my daughter to look back. And I'll tell you the most beautiful thing that still makes me cry. I don't want my daughter to look back when she's an adult and see her mom be such an unhealthy person at her event. And I remember visiting my daughter during the summer at sleepaway camp. And I started my health plan the day before I visited her. It was day 1. And I will never, ever forget this as long as I live. She was about 11 years old. And she said to me, do you want to go get a chocolate ice cream together? And I said, no, I'm not going to eat chocolate ice cream anymore. I'm going to get very healthy so that I can look really, really healthy and beautiful for your bat mitzvah. And she looked at me and she was totally confused. She was so confused. She had no idea what I was talking about. And she said, why? You're so pretty, Mommy.
Oh.
And years later, when she was older and we talked about it, she said to me, I never ever knew you were overweight.
I love kids. Aww.
She never, she said, I never knew.
I love that. Oh my God, you're making me cry now. Stop it. So, Jason had another question. Jill, can you talk about the way you felt when your world was crashing down? Did you feel anxious? Did you feel frustrated or paralyzed with your own self?
So when you say crashing down, do you mean when I had the PE, Jason? At which point my world has come crashing down so many times it's hard to be, could you be specific about which crash?
So I think that's really well said. I do believe that each of us have trials and tribulations that break us, and then we put the pieces back together and we're getting closer to our true self. So I guess, seeing that you're being so vulnerable and transparent, I'm going to allow for you to swim within what you feel this community might need to hear from your experiences.
Well, it's interesting. I think probably most people would imagine that having a PE was the biggest crash, and it wasn't. Because I didn't believe anything I was being told. It was certainly the scariest, but I wasn't listening. And everything that I was being told by the medical community, I was rejecting. So I know that there were experts explaining to me what was happening, but I remember distinctly thinking, no, 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 that's not possible. And I remember everyone around me, my parents, my husband, my friends taking it very seriously, and me feeling as though I was traveling alone in a bubble. And I was like, no, 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 this can't be right. And perhaps that was how I survived it. What really felt like the hardest crash for me was when I was standing out on the street at Dunkin' Donuts, and I thought that I had done this all right. And I realized that it was all wrong, that making all the money and having this big fancy job and all that was all wrong, that why would anyone want this? What's so great about having a big title and a big unhealthy body and a big bank account? There's nothing great about it. You're hearing me tell you. So if anyone's working toward it, it doesn't do very much except buy you a lot of things, but it doesn't give you time with your children. It doesn't give you good results when you go to the doctor, and it sets you up for a lot of fear and danger. So, Jason, your question is a beautiful question. Is the way I felt was terrified, out of control, and what I recognized was that I had far more work to do to get back to safe, and that work was a lot harder than any of the work I had ever done in my career. Much harder work, much deeper work. And that's the work that I still to this day try harder to focus on. It's never over. It's never done. It's easy to lose sight of, and it's easy to bury ourselves in what's easy for us, whether it's our work, our art, whatever it is that we do naturally. For me, it's my work. I can easily go into the work. It's the health, it's the mental health that has to be a focus, or I know me, I can go off track.
And the thing is, too, is if we don't have our health, if we don't have our wellness, if we can't breathe, we can't do any of those things. We can't work. We can't spend time with the folks we love. And we have to remind ourselves that. And we are in this world where we're just told to work, 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 work. That's how you succeed. But then it's like something happens where someone you love passes away or you get sick, and then you're like, what does this all mean, right? So if you had to leave, because we're almost out of time, if you had to, what's the one takeaway you want the folks who are on this call to take with them from this, your experience?
When I was a little girl, I broke up with a guy I thought I loved, and I was devastated. I was broken. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And my mom came in my room and she handed me a quote. I hung it up inside my closet door, and it has forever been my favorite quote. Sometimes our darkest fears mirror our deepest desires. That which we sit around that we're really afraid of may in fact be the exact thing we need to just go after. And ultimately, that's what I did. I've never been happier for it. And I hope to live it, role model it. I'm glad my kids got to see me do it. I'm glad I didn't expire before I got to do it. And I hope to inspire other people to just jump, because you never want to lose the chance.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jill. That was so inspirational. Folks, if you can go into view and then go into gallery mode, so you should probably see all of us. And I think you guys know what to do. Turn on your videos, turn on your, unmute yourself, because Jill deserves a big round of applause. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Jill. Turn on your videos, turn on your, unmute yourself. Thank you so much. That was so powerful. That last quote, I'm going to remember that. And I think you've inspired so many people watching this who are trying to figure out what's next, that sometimes what you fear is really what you need to take you to where you really want to be. Amen.
Well, Lan, you inspire me every single day. So it is such an opportunity for me to be with you and your amazing community. So thank you. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read the amazing comments, and what a special opportunity. So thank you so much.
And a big cheer for Josh for saving this amazing woman's life. Josh, woohoo! Husband of the year. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Make sure you follow Jill. I'll put on in the links her website. And if you need any HR help or whatnot, you know where to go to. And find her on LinkedIn too. I'll add that all in the comments. Bye, everyone. See you.
Thanks, Lan.